Good to see you all. I've got an extra couple of minutes, yes. I've also got too many slides, so let's try and do this properly. So hello everyone, my name is Gabriel Hughes, and I was here last year actually in presenting, and at that time I was presenting as the CEO of Metagenie, a custom marketing measurement agency based in London, with some great clients, some stellar clients. And we were doing so well that we actually sold the agency, I sold the agency to Croud, and just this summer. So I'm now, yeah, all right. It's okay, it's okay. I'm on a bit of a journey, But essentially, we are now part of Croud, global agency, full service agency, but we are now advanced analytics. I am the global director of advanced analytics at Croud. I'm going to talk to you today about this important subject, using data to understand that balance of brand and performance, to measure the whole funnel, and just to answer those really difficult questions about, yeah, where should you put your money? It's probably the most strategic question in marketing, isn't it? How do you optimize the balance of these two types of marketing, and how do you optimize within these channels as a joined up approach? What's the answer? So I'm going to try to answer this for you today. So Croud, 14 years ago, Croud was a small but emerging PPC-focused performance agency. And what's happened is they've slowly become more and more of a full funnel agency. One of their other acquisitions before me was Born Social. So they have really strong social media capabilities. They are now a full funnel agency across performance and brand. They've always been about being data-driven. And in fact, one of the most important hires that Croud has made is the incredible analytics influencer, the global influencer, Avinash Kaushik, who, as you may know, has been a long influencer for being data-driven, for incrementality in particular. He's the Chief Strategy Officer, which just signals how important it is to Croud to be data-driven, not least acquiring Metagenie and employing me as well. So we're all about being data-driven across the full funnel. So how we do it at Croud, solving this problem of measuring the full funnel, is we have a global team of data scientists. We collaborate with our clients. We're working on AI, machine learning, all the latest techniques. We have a range of solutions. So it really is a service to bring to our clients the highest standards of measurement, combining technology and service. So that's how we do it. But I'm not going to talk about how we do it. I'm going to talk about how you potentially can do it in whatever markets you're serving, and how you can address this challenge, brand and performance. Well, what is the role of data within marketing, and even broadly within an organization? And the answer, I believe, is really to help people make better decisions. Now, in this world, that doesn't have to be human beings making choices based on insights. It can be automation. It can be something where there's a closed loop between the analysis and the outcome, of course. This happens all the time. But I would argue it's still fundamentally a decision that you need to make as an organization. It's fundamentally a people kind of problem to decide what data you're going to leverage and how, what technologies you're going to rely on to basically automate versus what technologies you're going to rely on to make critical and strategic marketing decisions. So as Archimedes said, give me a lever and a place to stand, and I think he said it was like a long enough lever, and I will move the world. The principle of leverage, in that mechanical sense, is, I think, very apt in a marketing context. How do you leverage your marketing budget to really get the very best you can in terms of ROI, in terms of sales? Which levers do you pull? How much do you pull them by? It's kind of a portfolio optimization problem, as well as an absolute problem about where to spend your money to get results. So that's what data does. It maximizes your leverage through the mechanism of measurement. Well, the most strategic marketing choice is between brand and performance, that balance. So what I've done here is there's a study that's out there, and it's taken from various MMM sources. Sorry it's not credited on here, but it's all over the internet anyway. I've indexed the ROI they've taken, because ROI varies from different channels. So this is just sort of taking the average at 100, and this is about the ROI you get from performance as opposed to more of a brand performance mix. But the basic point here is just that it's commonly received wisdom, and seems to be backed up by various studies, that smaller brands invest more in performance, and then as you get larger and you become more established, you invest more in brand. Okay? So to begin with, there's available demand that you can capture with performance. You've got a low profile. It's literally low-hanging fruit to simply be present on the internet and to hoover up the available demand that's there. But as you get bigger, you need to make yourself distinctive, and you need to drive the top of the funnel. You start to lose incremental gains on your performance. You need somewhere to go. You need to find new customers, new audience. You invest in brand. So that's essentially, brand and performance 101. You almost pick your mix depending on the size and the profile that your brand has. That's not really data-driven, is it? I mean, to just pick a generic ROI return in this way across all sectors and just pick something off and decide the balance on that basis. We need to do better than that, and we need to have something that works for our particular vertical, our particular brand. Well, this is the problem, and I'm going to talk really for the rest of this presentation about this problem, so please pay attention to this slide. So what I'm referring to here is essentially the measurement challenge that exists. The measurement challenge, when you compare performance and brand, when you make that crucial choice, is between, on the one hand, performance capturing short-term demand versus brand driving long-term demand. And then when you get to measurement, what tends to happen is, at this end, there's really rich, precise data, because people are actually doing things. They're actually exhibiting research, consideration, and buying behavior that results in them, for example, visiting your site or your app. They're engaging with you on some level. You can literally see them in the data interacting with you. And so it's much, much easier to capture the data here. But at this end of things, this all-important brand building and demand building end of things, the data is typically much harder to obtain. It's sparse, it's imprecise, and there's a reason for this. The reason is, and two reasons I would refer to. One is the mechanism that you're trying to measure here is psychological. It's measuring what goes on in people's heads, whereas at this end, it's what they're doing on their devices. It's clicks and interactions. So it's just something you literally can't measure because it's happening in this ethereal space of consciousness and brand awareness, right, that you can only reach by doing things like asking people questions about what brands they're aware of and all those kinds of things. It takes a long time to do. There's small amounts of data. It's imprecise. And the other reason why it's so hard and why you get sparse and imprecise data at the brand end of the equation is because of the time lag that it takes between the marketing event and the sale. As you go further back in time, it becomes harder and harder to make that connection between the exposure to the ad and the sale. You can't see it in the data. It's harder to pick up statistically in that way. So this is another reason why you get this patchy view of the world when you get into brand. So what's the answer? How do we solve this problem? Well, the way in which people solve it, these are some of the ways that people solve it that I'm sure you will be familiar with. So the first way is just to use all the various, in the digital space at least, is just to use all the various platform metrics and reports that are available and just pull off those numbers and just use those, right? I mean, that's telling you what's going on. Is that solving the problem? Well, it's capturing some of the performance activity. It's not really doing a very good job with brand. Maybe you've got some metrics that you can pull off the social platforms that give you some kind of view-through type number if you can believe in it. It's fragmented, doesn't really solve the problem. The other way that you get, and you see a lot of people do, is some sort of composite metric. It's where you take a bit of brand awareness, a bit of audience reach, a bit of your ROI on performance. You take a bunch of different things, your net promoter score, something like that. You put it all in a spreadsheet, and you apply some weights. And you use the weights to give you an index, a number. At last, we have a number. And if that number goes up, you're doing better. why have I got a picture of apples and oranges up here? Well, you're comparing apples and oranges, aren't you? And the weights are entirely subjective. And what you end up with is a big kind of kombucha number that doesn't really mean anything. It sort of blends everything together, but doesn't really tell you about the relationship between these important numbers and these important dimensions. It doesn't really answer the question. It kind of works as a sort of health gauge, maybe, but what's it really telling you? And so you end up with hippos and hunches. I think we all know what a hippo is. If you haven't heard the phrase before, highest paid person's opinion. I've got a feeling that my brand advertising's working, so I'm going to spend more on it. I've literally had people say that to me. I feel like it's working. So I know I'm going to spend more money because it feels like it's working. Feels like it's working. Well, I'm glad it feels like it's working. Is it working? What's working? How's it working? But you end up just having to make these decisions based on really crude measurements because you haven't got anything else to go on. I mean, all of these, I've got some sympathy with these, actually, believe it or not, because, right, I mean, if you do a marketing strategy and it doesn't feel right and it doesn't agree with your personal experiences, well, maybe there is a problem. Maybe you should challenge it in some way. And you kind of do expect effective marketing to score well on individual metrics and on platform metrics. So, you know, you're trying to do the right thing. You're just not really solving the problem. What's the answer? Dun, 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 dun. Enter the hero. This MM is actually, I believe it's Marvel Man. Apparently it's some sort of 1950s or earlier British superhero that no one's ever heard of. But anyway, I thought it could be market mix models, MMM, okay? Econometrics. Seems to be the answer, right? We do MMM, it's great. It's well-established statistical approach. You can model offline as well as online marketing, so it's not restricted to digital. You bring in external factors, right? You can bring in business trends, you can look at things like competitor activity, you can look at the role of price and promotions. It's really good for helping you see that, you know, your marketing might have to work harder during a period of, you know, difficult economic conditions and trading conditions. So it's really good at solving some of these big questions. And, you know, the typical model has got, you know, a model of your response curves. You can see diminishing returns. You can actually see what's happening there. You can work out whether or not your ROI is going to be sustained or decrease as you invest more. So it can really help you, therefore, establish the optimal level of spend to achieve that ROI. Job done. But, so I'm going to go now. It's done. That's the answer. No. Right. It's not a panacea. If we get this far in the story and we've got a hero who seems to solve everything, we know that the hero must face some challenges, and there are indeed challenges. So what are the challenges then with MMM in this space? Well, it is good for media planning, for those strategic questions. Typically, MMM is done biannually or quarterly. Some organizations claim to do MMM more quickly. If you know anything about MMM and statistical modeling, you'll know that if your model is changing on a week-by-week basis, then the model's unstable, actually. So you don't want it to be jumping around. So it really isn't very good for those short-term tactical decisions. There's quite a wide range of estimates. Anyone who's ever done MMM will know that different models give you different answers. And you have to do all clever things with sort of priors and constraints and stuff like that to try to give you the answers. It's interesting, isn't it? How Google and Meta have open-sourced MMM libraries for people to use. So they obviously want us all to do MMM. That's great, right? So it must be the answer. But here's a question. Why don't they then, these are technology companies who are behind platforms like Google Analytics, why don't they just make a nice UI that allows you to log in, upload your data, and press a button and run the model? Why does it need to be some library on GitHub? This is Google. Surely they can afford to just give us the answer in a platform kind of environment. Why don't they do that? And the answer is, because as soon as they do that and you use it, it will give you complete rubbish. That's why. Because this requires expertise. This creates a range of different answers. This is not something you can just plug and play and run, MMM. Not everyone fully trusts it, for good reasons and bad. Some people don't want to trust it because they're a hippo. Other people, quite rightly, challenge some of the assumptions that have to go into MMM to make it to work. And overall, it leads to slow and uncertain decision-making. So don't get me wrong, I think MMM is great. I think that, you know, for medium to large organizations in particular, you should be looking at MMM as a way to think about your marketing budget in the context of your business, but it is not a panacea. So back to this chart again. What I'm trying to say about MMM is that in trying to measure everything, it's actually quite precise at measuring anything in particular. So it's not quite long-term enough. Not everyone trusts it, as I said. It's not really very precise. Is it really giving you incrementality, or is it just modeled incrementality? You know, the baseline is a kind of model of seasonality. It's not really true uplift. And it's kind of too slow, because it's not enabling me to optimize the tactical parts of my marketing, the campaigns, and so on. So in terms of this landscape of measurement that I painted earlier, it kind of sits in the middle, but it doesn't really serve the full panoply of what you need. So is there an alternative to MMM, market mix modeling? Well, let's have a look. One alternative, more MMM. Let's do more MMM. So for long-term brand value, this is actually the answer. Sometimes it's called structural MMM. The idea is you build your MMM. The MMM typically has a baseline, which is your underlying demand. It's sales driven by things like repeat customer behavior, by seasonality, by external economic factors, underlying demand in the market, if you will. And then MMM gives you the, how many M's? Gives you the extra marketing value that marketing contributes over and above that baseline, the incremental measurement. What long-term brand MMM does is it takes that marketing and says, over a longer time period of many, many months, or even years, how does the marketing drive the baseline itself? Can you build and sustain that underlying demand? Brand marketing is a little bit like, you know, the water in a swimming pool. If you pulled out a plug in that swimming pool, you wouldn't notice the water drain away. But if you leave it long enough, the water will drain away. So it is a long-term play, so let's adapt our models to model over a longer period of time. That's the kind of intuition behind brand MMM. So that's one answer. So this kind of explains it. You've got this baseline in the marketing. You've got your marketing activity. Typically, MMM looks at a couple of months ahead and says, well, this marketing activity has lagged effects. You have concepts like ad stock still around. All predates the internet, this stuff, in terms of measurement. And you build this statistical model. And then what long-term brand MMM does is it says, OK, how does this activity affect the baseline right over here? And how has it been built itself from activity that happened before? So it's just a longer-term picture of the same thing. OK, another solution which tries to address some of the other challenges of MMM that I raised, like incrementality, is, of course, to think about channel incrementality. And the reason I put a box around both of them is because incrementality testing is now easier than ever. You can do it now within platform. So, you know, Meta and Google will give you the capability to run your own uplift tests. You should really use that. But it only gives you that very narrow view of that channel. It doesn't give you the marketing mix. Actually, if you do it right, for example, using geo experiments, you can analyze using, I'm talking about control treatment tests, you can analyze uplift from a mixture of different tactics and strategies. So you can actually look at the marketing mix in an experimental framework. So the idea is that if you've got pre-marketing data and then post-marketing, and you've got two different geographies, you can attribute, you can model this baseline using one geography, and you can create a baseline for another geography and create uplift. I know I've packed a lot into that explanation there, but that's essentially it. You need to pick matching geos and try different categories in certain geos versus others and look at what happens, right? So you use the geos to control for all those offline drivers that MMM picks up, and then you use the differential in activity as a control treatment basis for measuring uplift. Okay, sounds like a pain, It is a pain. It's an absolute pain. These tests are a real, they're a bind. Even doing the in-platform test offered by Meta, people aren't doing it. Why aren't they doing it? It's a pain. You need to design the test, you need to wait for ages, it doesn't always give you results. So although incrementality testing using control treatment group is the gold standard of measurement, it's the scientific standard of measurement, it is like the two Petri dishes, the one's got mold, the one doesn't, it must be the penicillin that did it. Although it's the way for precisely measuring something, it just doesn't scale very well. And it still has challenges with that long-term piece that I talked about. Okay, but if you can do it, you should do it. So the other piece then, given that testing is cumbersome, given that it's limited, given that the strategic view evolves slowly in response to testing, you still need something punchier. The new kid on the block in measurement, something that we're very interested in at Croud, is causal AI. And if you want to know more about causal AI, our head of data science, Puneet, is sitting right here, and he's an expert on the subject. Come and talk to him. Our stand's over there. He'll tell you all about causal AI. You might want to get away because he might go on a bit too much, but he knows all about it. But this is where, and I'm a believer in this, so this book's a good one, this book of why. This is very technical, this one earlier book. But this is very much the new science of cause and effect. It's proper science. 5 minutes. Okay, I've got my timings wrong somehow. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, it's brilliant. You can model cause and effect. I'm going to speed up. Model cause and effect, and you can ask incrementality questions without running tests. So what I want to say next is that, with brand, as you've established, it's easy to waste money as measurement is imprecise and takes a long time to get right. But with performance, you'd be a bloody fool to waste money because there's so much data available for tactical optimization. So for heaven's sake, if you're not investing in accurately measuring your performance part of the picture, then you need to crack on with it. Day-to-day optimization. Now, the way we do this is with attribution, and if you know me, you'll know my background is I patented attribution at Google. I've been obsessed with this problem for ages. We have something that combines first-party data, including customer data, to create click-based machine learning attribution. And then we also layer on impression models. So it's very directional. So very specific recommendations at campaign level, daily updated, moving your budget around, custom design and build attribution platform. And we model the impressions as well and bake it in. So the moral of the story is that you need a measurement strategy. There isn't a single solution. I wish there was a big single solution I could just pitch into you, but there isn't. You need a measurement strategy that reflects what you're trying to do with your brand and performance and that uses methodologies appropriate to the kinds of questions you're trying to answer. There isn't a way to munge it all together in one big single method, although I'm a great fan of hybrid models and combining them together. In fact, that's what we do with the click and impression attribution I was just referring to. So it's back to where we started. It is more of a people challenge than a data challenge. After all, it's you and your team who need to make those decisions, okay? So you need to think about people and collaboration. It's no good doing all this analysis if you're not using the analysis to make smarter decisions after all. So that's what you need to do. You need to think about your measurement strategy. What is the combination of people, marketing, tools, technology you're going to use to achieve where you want to go? So I hope you find that an interesting whistle-stop tour of measurement methodologies. Thank you very much for your time. I'm available if you want to chat to me afterwards. Thank you for listening.